So we're here today with Sister Jenna of the Brahma Kumaris and Philip Hellmich, who's with the Shift Network and also an author of God and Conflict. And I'm really honored to be here as a representative of the Charter for Compassion. The Charter is a thriving global network of currently 440 cities or regions of compassion, more than 2,000 partners of compassion organized in 12 sectors of society and 52 countries. It's mostly a volunteer organization of people like us who come together to do what we can to presence peace, compassion, and open-heartedness to learn about each other. I serve as the regional lead for Sacramento and Northern California for the women and girls sector. And our vision is to elevate the work of our partners and our community to improve conditions and advance solutions for women and girls. And you can find out more about the Charter for Compassion at www.charterforcompassion.org. So the reason that I invited Sister Jenna and Philip today is that we were on a call the other day, our ambassadors of the women and girls, and we're working with a man by the name of Clay Boynton, and he works with Circles of Men. And he's starting to form the men and boys sector of the Charter for Compassion. And so he's been working along with us. And we were speaking with a man in Kenya, and he was sharing with us some of the work that he's doing there. And it came to me that because I'm involved in the Visionaries Summit that's going to take place this month in Sacramento, that's sponsored by the Shift Network, that it would be really wonderful to highlight Sister Jenna and Philip because they're both going to be working at or presenting at the summit and working together. And one of their topics is internal to international. Starts within our own self. And where do we go from there? And yet some people get very agitated from the outside and they don't know what to do and they're not able to find their center. And so how do we do that? And Sister Jenna, one of the things is I did more research on you. I've followed you and enjoyed your company. I've found this quote. It said, "I always advise women to pay attention to these 3 C's. Stop criticizing, complaining, and comparing yourself along the way. When you do these 3 C's, it disturbs your beauty, it disturbs your power, and it disturbs your success."
Guilty.
And well, it was really lovely because it really goes into that heart of that self-criticism and how that affects us and disturbs the power that we have inside of us that can emanate from the strength that is connected to whatever we may call our source.
And what's even more powerful is that building on that energy over a long period of time, it begins to show through your eyes.
Yeah.
Then you start to attract people with the same vibration and you wonder what's going on.
Feels good. Unless it doesn't. Because when we're in shock and pain and terror, and that's very difficult to be able to let anybody in. And Philip, I came across some of your work. You've just done extensive work also throughout the world, both of you. And Philip traveled to Iran in 2016 and returned. And he talked about what he experienced in Iran, went far beyond his wildest dreams, and shattered all the stereotypes that are promoted in the U.S. media.
Yes, that was just just a phenomenal experience because the preparation, the trip came about. Stephen Dinan and I, Stephen's the CEO of the Shift Network, founder, we're meeting with a congressperson. And I said, hey, if you want to go to Iran, I worked with Search for Common Ground, and we could arrange for you to go to Iran. And well, anyway, one thing led to another, because Search for Common Ground had done a lot of work with Iran to open up relationships with the United States. But just prior to that trip, so many people strongly advised not going. There was so many. My sister literally cried the day I was leaving because she didn't think she'd see me again. And when I got there, every city, town, and village I went to, that the group went to, a whole group from the Shift Network community went there. People would walk up, ask where we were from, and then thank us for being there. They said, we love Americans. Our governments don't get along. And I was just amazed by the love, the generosity, the warm-heartedness. People invited us into their homes. And then also just the incredible history and culture that we just don't hear much about. Thousands of year old civilizations and contributions to the world, and beautiful, ecstatic Sufi poetry. I mean, it was just an amazing experience. And it's just a reminder not to just buy into whatever CNN and Fox News says, and just realize that, everyone wants to be happy and wants to avoid suffering. And when we can connect as humans, that generally there's a lot of compassion and love that just spontaneously arises. So that was a wonderful gift from the people from Iran.
Mm. That's so beautiful. It reminds me of the work I did for a few years and still continue to do with Braveheart Women. And one of my partners is Dr. Ellie Drake, and she's from Iran. Mm-hmm. And she brought together 99 women at the wall, 33 from the United States, 33 from Iran, and 33 from Pakistan. And wow, what an experience. They were together for 5 days. And it ignited such beauty and compassion within their hearts for people to meet heart to heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing here, is people to people. And we often do, like Philip, you encountered, was our families are afraid because of what the news puts out. And they it makes a separation. And so what I love that we're doing with the Shift Network and other organizations, and in this Visionary Summit that we're coming together for in this month here in Sacramento, the capital state, is really coming together and showing, to borrow the phrase of the organization you were with, Philip, for so long, Search for Common Ground. Mm-hmm. And that common ground for me is really from that center of our heart, and really looking in each other's eyes, as you did with me, Sister Jenna, when I first met you here in Sacramento a couple of years ago at the first gathering, and Philip the same. And Sandy came into my life that year as well, as we prepared to create the event, the first Visionaries coming together here in Sacramento. So a lot of people don't really understand what we're doing at this summit, and it's been a mixture throughout the first 2 years, and now we're coming into the third year, and both of you will be here in Sacramento at the Visionary Summit. That's what it's now called. And you'll be coming together and sharing with people your title again is from internal to international. I've lost
It's peace, from inner peace to international peace building. It'll be a panel discussion where we'll look at peace as a continuum. I mean, one of the things that the Shift Network, and Sister Jenna has been a key part of this as part of the Wisdom Council for the Summer of Peace, is over an 8-year period, we interviewed hundreds of people in a systematic way that looked at peace from inner to international. And there's a World Peace Library. And as far as I know, it's the first bird's eye view of really looking at these many different expressions of peace. And so that worldpeacelibrary.com, it's a free resource. And it really provides a sense of hope and inspiration that there's this impulse of peace that's emerging through many unique ways through individuals around the world across 20-some sectors of society. And that impulse is similar, and yet it's expressed uniquely depending on the cultural context or the individuals. And so this panel is the first panel of its kind to really sit down and say, okay, there is peace emerging from inner to international. Let's have a panel of three beautiful souls who are deeply inspired to be promoting peace through their lives. And we'll look at this. And so we'll have Sister Jenna anchoring inner and interpersonal peace. And then we'll have Elaine Whitefeather looking at peace on the community level. And then on the international level, we'll have Amadine Roche. And all three of these brilliant people, women, are just really anchoring peace and really working to embody peace while expressing it in the world. And Sister Jenna, I'm one of her biggest fans or siblings. I don't know what you would say, Sister Jenna, but what Sister Jenna is doing in Washington, D.C. with the Brahma Kumaris Center, we've known each other for how many
Over 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, we go way back. And one of the things I wanted to add, what Philip was saying, is to be able to also find the peace in the midst of the chaos. And I think that's what everyone on the panel will be sharing, because there's a lot happening in all of our lives simultaneously, and all the pieces aren't in place. And in order to bring the pieces in place, we're going to have to find a place within ourselves to be at peace. Because it won't become peaceful, it won't come into place if I'm peaceless. So I think that's where the message of the panel, we want that to spread across the globe for leaders, individuals who are behind movements, housewives at home, children in schools. There will be chaos. But to what extent do you find a place within yourself to be at peace as you bring the pieces together?
And Brenda, if you don't mind, one of the things with Sister Jenna I really enjoy, you've been working in the Washington, D.C. area for the last few decades. And then you're here you are with the Meditation Museum, American Meditating radio program, and you're staying true to this essence of being peace, and you're quite humble about your own transformation. I would, Brenda, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear Sister Jenna talk about what it's been like to bring that presence literally into the White House. And
you always ask me that question.
Well, it's quite fascinating, because it seems like there can't be that kind of deep peace in these type of political environments, and yet you're embodying it, and you're meeting people, like similar minded and hearted.
It's funny, I've been asked that question a lot. Even from my own Brahma Kumari community, they ask me, what are the steps that you're taking? What are you doing right? Show us, teach us. And I always end up being extremely quiet, like I don't know actually what I'm doing. What I do, what I have acknowledged is that I care a lot for our humanity. I care a lot for people. I care a lot for my future. And just the energy in which it's in right now has me even more fired up, but sometimes quite sad. So there's this energy that's inside of my consciousness, a sadness that needs fuel, but also a fire that needs also more fuel. And I think both are colliding and moving me in places that I need to be in for service. When I usually show up to all these venues, I don't know if you've ever saw my series on it's called Soul Talk on the Hill, Thanks for the Catalyst, featuring one of my conversations with Holocaust survivor, former Tom Lantos, who is a former congressman and who passed away a few years ago, his wife, Annette Lantos. But one of the things that I've recognized is when I show up in these spaces, I'm very, very neutral. I'm very neutral. I don't know what God wants. And I think that if I get out of the way, he will do stuff, she will do stuff. And that's how I show up in a lot of these spaces. And there's something magical, mystical, or normal that happens where a relationship is forged. There's a genuine sense of building a relationship that's forged. It's very genuine. I begin to keep my awareness open as to where to connect the dots with the secular and the spiritual, because I feel that in our spiritual community, folks within our community tend to be quite saturated with information. That my observation is that sometimes we don't receive it with that depth anymore because we already know. I already know, oh, but that's good. Did you hear what Joe Dispenza just said? Did you hear what Michael Beckwith just said? Who, by the way, Michael Beckwith will be at the Visionaries Summit as well. And so I found something that Stephen Dinan, from the founder of the Shift Network, said to me many years ago. I forgot what event I took him in. I think it was the mayor of DC. We had a special program. And he gave me the title of being the translator, the one who can just walk into the jaws of the lion and come out with a tooth, because it was aching the lion, and I'll be like, this was the problem. So I show up, Philip and everyone, with just a deep feeling for our world. I don't know what's going to come out of the meetings. I do know that if we just show up and sit and begin to dialogue about each other's world, there is something already preordained in the destiny written, in which we are the actors coming in to play out the part. So that's definitely the inner perspective. And secondly, if there's a particular project, agenda, issue that seems to be in alignment with something that we are doing or can do or support, then I'll bring that to the table. And one of the most important factors is time. It's like you planted the seed, in time it'll grow. So I'm here for 22 years now, 22, 23 years. And the irony is, in this administration, I've already been to the White House twice and have been in connection with members of the leadership. And one of the things that I've been noticing about my own inner conscience is stay clean, no judgment, stay clean. Because sometimes in darkness, there are treasures, and you need to look for those treasures, and you are a treasure, and you need to be there. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah, those planting seeds are so important. And I had the pleasure of meeting Nemo Patesh when I was at the Parliament in 2018. Sandy had just kept telling me, you got to show up, you got to come to the Parliament. And I really didn't know why. And it was really lovely to be there and meet him, because I love his music and how he brings that forth for people. That each of us, when we come in and we anchor a space, like the Peaceful was one of the ways I've got involved with Mathisa Goy's work, and that each of us is that center of peace. And when I met you first, Sister Jenna, I felt that and in you, and you stopped me and had me look in your eyes, and that's some of the work that I've been doing for years with Braveheart Women, and then was called in to work on the Shift Network, this event. And so I had the pleasure of meeting you.
Did I say stick 'em up, give me your eyes?
And then I met Philip the first day, and it happened to be the International Day of Peace that day, and which was such a apropos time because of the work that he does and the work that I've come in to do at this point. And I met Sandy and became involved in the charter, and it's so beautiful, the expressions that we're having from that center of peace. And I've recognized that a lot of people don't know what peace means, or compassion, and that compassion is messy, because it's really stepping in, as you were saying, Sister Jenna, it's the juxtaposition of those two. And how do we bring the polarity, the disparity together through our own selves. And so I love your topic, internal to international. That's where I've really come from. How is it that I can calm my own self first? And I wanted to ask each of you, how do you describe compassion?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
At a personal level, it's a very deep quality of acceptance, even though I know I'm not all fixed, I'm not all in place. I accept that I'm not all together. For some reason, that just opens up a plethora of love when I can do that for myself. And practiced enough on the self, it extends in my relationships with others, that I can somehow reach to that mode of accepting them. That's one thing. And I would say that another aspect of compassion for me is to believe that my heart, being gentle, is very forceful. I feel it's having a very gentle heart, but it has a great deal of force in it. And because compassion, sometimes we're so compassionate that we take on board so much of the suffering of the world or others that we become useless. So I need my gentle heart to have a quality of force in it that is governed by God's experience, experiencing God, that can just come forth. And that's coming to mind just now.
Nice, sister.
Thank you.
It's interesting. You're asking that question. Here I am back in Indiana in the house where, I grew up, 10 siblings, not by birth, and my parents. And I'm just aware how much my parents and my siblings really taught me by their way of being. With my dad working in a factory, mom staying home, we needed to really work together in order, everyone went through college. We really had created a context, and there was always an awareness of one another and each other's needs and sensitivities. And so I kind of grew up in this environment where there was this awareness of others and self in relation to others. And I didn't realize it until later that was uncommon. It's not a common upbringing. And then going off to West Africa, I then learned how to expand that to people of a completely different culture. And so when thinking about like that, starting with the inner self and then the interpersonal, like with the family, there was just this natural quality of caring, concern, awareness, anticipating needs, and just this natural response to pain or suffering, wanting to be there to help and serve. And so learning to do that, just really simple methods. My parents would say, shovel the walks for the neighbors when there's snow. And there's just this awareness of the humanity in each of the siblings and my parents and the neighbors and the rest of the people in the school. And then carrying that over and having that really expanded by living in small villages, West Africa. It's like, wow, treating others as if they're family. And there's the humanity that they're experiencing is the humanity that I'm experiencing myself. And so it's just been a natural outgrowth of expanding that circle of compassion, self, family, community, and larger global aspect. And, it's interesting, Brenda, and then with the work doing with Search for Common Ground, the basic principle is when we rediscover our common humanity, compassion is a natural response. And there's a lot behind this. And then later with the work with the Shift Network and all the, partner with Stanford University, Compassion Center, we start to see that humans are wired for compassion and altruism and love. And then we're also wired for fight, flight, and freeze. And there's a lot of neuroscience and psychology around. We can create the conditions for compassion to naturally arise. And so it's I feel like I've been a student in life of love and compassion. And then how can that love and compassion be brought out in very difficult situations? As Sister Jenna was saying, chaos, in some of the places I visited been deadly violence, and yet compassion is possible. And so one of the quotes, someone asked me what peace building was, and I just reflected on it a long time. And what I like to think is like peace, love, and compassion are qualities of the soul. They're innate within us. And then peace building is the art and science of awakening those soul qualities in practical ways that help to uplift humanity in all of life. And so we're all walking around with that capacity, and then we can learn through family, parents, siblings, how to bring it forward. And then, like the Charter Compassion, the programs you have, we can actually learn to bring that. And so it's interesting. And then when seeing pain and conflict, there's, people always act for reasons, and we don't always know why. And if we can just inquiry about why, and some of the work that you're doing with young girls and women, and then some of your partners with young boys and men, Elaine Whitefeather around domestic violence, if we can ask why, we get to the roots. Anyway, so that's a little bit longer-winded answer than I anticipated. It's a beautiful aspect of being human, compassion. It's a very beautiful aspect. And what the Dalai Lama says, love and compassion are necessities. Without them, we won't survive. So.
And haven't you found when a situation does occur or a conversation is emerging in front of you and that scene requires you to be compassionate, but you find that you became judgmental or critical, something in your heart hurts or closes, something in your spirit closes. And just imagine serving that norm for a year, 5 years, 20 years, 50, 2 lifetimes, 10 lifetimes, 20 lifetimes. So like the return journey, I want to say, it's going to sound like an oxymoron. It's the return journey forward. So it's sort of like a moving again into what we were like when we were naturally wired for compassion. And it's that it takes time, that every opportunity that we get, that we can apply the no 3 C's, no criticism, no comparison, no competition or anything like that. Just let me practice this. This scene warrants me to be compassionate and to be able to practice it when we get moments to do so. The Visionaries Summit that's coming up, we're hoping that Marianne Williamson will also come, who's one of the presidential candidates that's running for the Democratic 2020 upcoming run. And one of the things that I've appreciated about Marianne Williamson is that she's bridging the secular and the spiritual, something that I deeply believe in. And if you've noticed how challenging it has been for the country to understand her language, and I'm really hoping that she'll be able to find the time to make the summit. It's on the board because of campaigning. But the fact that the country has not heard a language like this, even though they've thought it, they've not heard it in main media. And I want to kind of address her right now, the run, because the Visionaries Summit to me is about bridging these two worlds. To be able to invite individuals to understand the policies, the laws, the current state that the country's in, but to be also able to look at the interior way in which you're interpreting what's going on, and what is it that you are capable of showing up with and for to assist in moving our country forward to be the beacon of hope for humanity, to be what we call in Hinduism the golden age, the Satyug, for our country, for our lives, and for the world. So it has taken time for people to figure out what Vision 2020 was before it became the Visionaries Summit, is that we are inviting folks to recognize that there's a lot going on. There are a lot of issues at stake. We can't grapple them until we can figure out who we are to, or at least start to turn inwards and feel the spirit of our own compassion for ourselves, so that when we come into motion for areas of the environment, for areas of science, for areas of justice, the incarceration issues, the LGBTQIA community, that will come from a place of our compassion. So there will be none of the 3 C's in that intention. So to me, the summit is raising that awareness, similarly to how when Marianne Williamson first came on the stage, the rest of America was like, who is this person? Where all the cultural creatives, we all knew who she was. We've known who she is and what she's been doing. Then you have this 80% of the country like, who is that? What is she saying? So that's why the summit has been through that. What are they doing? What are they talking about? But in time, it will open up that gateway to say, oh, wow, this is what's needed in the country now. It's more of a reflective form of leadership.
Yeah.
Thank you for segueing right into the next part of what I wanted to ask. And so, Philip, lead right on.
Well, I just want to echo Sister there. You know, it's having been on this life journey this time, you know, who knows how many lifetimes. And I just know when I was working in Washington, D.C. and working in a peace building arena, it was clear that, you know, just incredible peace building work was leveraging these innate qualities of love, compassion, and in some of the most dire situations, you know, some of these conflicts across sub-Saharan Africa that I was able to go visit, there would be these people who would just be embodying these qualities, and that it was possible to then leverage those qualities with innovative radio programs and other media programs. And I remember talking with Fred Alan Wolf, a quantum physicist. It's like, if you create there was genocide in Rwanda, and that reality was created. And then right next door in Burundi, Search for Common Ground had people modeling compassion on the radio programs. And Fred Alan Wolf was saying, yeah, if you create that possibility in people's minds, it can become a reality. And so I've seen this happen over and over again. And yet at the time, the language was not really going into the deeper aspect of the human psyche, both from a spiritual context and also a neuroscience context. And some of the leading edges of peace building that I've seen are folks who are able to bridge, who are able to draw upon the ancient wisdom. I mean, all these different spiritual traditions have ancient wisdom to them. And, you know, and as sisters would say, the Sattvic, the golden ages. I mean, humanity's gone through ages of ascending and descending. And so these, you know, we have these ancient traditions, wisdom traditions, and then modern neuroscience is starting to really overlap there. And now I feel like the frontier of peace building, the frontier of social transformation, you know, Marianne Williamson was modeling it, you know, into these presidential debates. What does it mean when we talk about love as a powerful force and compassion? And so we're starting to see, you know, in the Visionary Summit is really exploring what does it look like to embody ancient wisdom, modern science, a new way of whatever, a new type of consciousness, a way of being into societal transformation. And so it's going to be bumpy, it's going to be rocky, it's going to be awkward at times. It's, you know, and at the same time, it's all emerging. And there is, you know, this is where I love Michael Singer, where, you know, he would just say there's a universal consciousness that's manifesting 2 trillion plus galaxies. And do we doubt that it's not manifesting through all of us and that it's evolving? So yeah, it's a big subject, and it's one that I've reflected on for decades, and I really enjoy engaging with people at that intersection of like, how do we make these ancient gems and wisdoms practical in daily life, and how do we bring them into a society in a world that again, if you're just watching CNN and Fox News, you would think the world's falling apart, and yet we also know that there's also a lot of positive that's emerging too.
Thank you for that, Philip. I want to do a little bit of a time check because we have I don't want to take all of your day, and want people to also stay in with us. And that was perfect for sharing into my next question. And we've got a few more minutes. It was a perfect segue into the Visionaries Summit. We were out on the streets last year at the Visionaries Summit going to lunch one day. And people were asking, who are you? I don't know why. They were just attracted to the people that were going out to lunch and things. And we started to talk about the summit, and they said, we know nothing about that. We would love to go to that. And so my next question, we have just a few more minutes left, but is how do people, how do we get the word out, for one thing, to people to come to this summit? Because it's Visionary Summit, and a lot of people don't see themselves as a visionary. And they look at the topic and they're like, wow, this is, real huge vision. Who am I? And as Marianne Williamson is famous for with Nelson Mandela, is who am I not to, right? And so how do we, from that internal, go affect the international? And that's what you're going to talk about at the summit. So I don't want to have you give everything away. I'd love people to come and join you at the summit. So just a real short wrap up here. What can the average person do, in their own life to, I formed a pretty good one, to bring compassion and action into their own life that helps them know that they're actually creating a change internationally, because we live in such a global world nowadays, and a lot of people don't think that they are affecting the outer world, but they really are in their presence, right?
Sister, you've been more concise than I have, so why don't you lead off?
I loved what you said, Philip. That was wonderful. I don't want to have more time with you. So more people, they need to come to the summit so they get to have time with you. And that's one thing I'll also plug for this summit is this is an opportunity, 4 days of community, of people walking in. And my first summit 2 years ago, I was so blessed. It's like, these are my people. This has been my dream. And here they are. And it's fabulous to see the great people like you, like both of you, and what you're doing in the world.
To answer your first question about getting the word out, I think it starts from a thought level, which it's already out there. I think we tend to feel that if we have 1 million or 2 million subscribers or listeners, we're definitely making an impact. And I'm not always aware of all the energy that goes behind all of that social media pushing all the time. Because if the intentions are more into a surfaced purpose, then the energy that's pushing it out isn't as powerful as maybe having 10 people listening to your show and your intention was completely pure and in alignment. It can have a much more dramatic impact on the life and the transformation of another person. I think that the way that we can get the message out is to go back to the old days, get on a phone call, visit a friend, have conversations, raise it at meetings, at luncheons, just talk about these things. I think we are distracted by the mode of posting it on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and that's your message, and then you email it out. And watched people, and I've even watched myself, that you might find yourself sometimes just scrolling through something without much purpose. Like you just, oh, like, oh no, oh, that's John. And that's not intentional. It's not intentional. And it's not as intentional as when you were walking and going to lunch and some folks met you and they felt something. So I think we need to go back to the old school of sharing our messages just by showing up. And the second thing is what I already answered the question, that in order to really increase compassion and mercy, let us practice accepting ourselves as we are, with room for growth. I think that's going to be absolutely essential. As you can see, Brenda, this isn't an easy panel with me, you, Philip, and all of us together, because we can go on and on. What happens when you have built friendships over the years that have not taken too much from each other, and it has been a shared interest with each other? I know Philip and I in the Shift Network, we have just showed up with an absolute balanced, shared intention and interest. And what's creating this imbalance also on the planet is that we've become a society of takers to such an extent that we take, and still the soul isn't full. And so if we can somehow transform that energy and start to become the benevolent ones, the ones that are definitely more on the giving end, from an intentional place first, and then with your skills and your talents and your qualities, with wisdom, of course. Don't just give to anyone and just have it like that, but with that sense of great intention. It will definitely not only create compassion, but people will automatically be drawn to the Visionary Summit. I think when you enter into a new school of thought, you can't go in with your same old ideas. We are also growing a lot in this process. Many of us who've been awakened are realizing we need to wake up more. Some of us are realizing that maybe we could be a lot more genuine in our journey, and some of us maybe just haven't gotten it. And so it's okay. It's we're growing in it, and just having this conversation with both of you, I'm also feeling a great deal of inspiration to even just get on the call with 10 friends in California and just tell them, could you just come and meet me out there? Just meet me. I want you to see what we're doing. You know.
Wonderful. I completely agree. That personal touch, and also then allowing person to be called to it. And Philip?
Well, I'm just marveling at life right now. You know, sister, our journey over 20 some years. And then Brenda, a new friendship with you the last 2 years. And I just also want to acknowledge you, Sandy, and so many people in Sacramento. You know, the Visionary Summit Sacramento was selected because it's the state capital. And so many people in Sacramento have really engaged with the summit, now the third year, rebranded as a Visionary Summit, and just really want to just acknowledge and celebrate you and all the people who have really been part of the summit. And what I've enjoyed about the summit is that it's organically growing. You know, it's organically growing, and as Sister pointed, you know, really being clear on the intention and the quality of it, and really looking at, you know, how do we bring in an embodied transformation into society. You know, it's a relatively new thing, and so we're all kind of birthing it together. So to me, the Visionary Summit is a community-owned initiative that the Shift Network has put into motion, and sister, I love this about just accepting where each of us are individually, accepting where each of us, you know, then spreading that out further, and then accepting the fact that the Visionary Summit is a new child. It's a new way of being, and it's our collective responsibility to give birth to it. And word of mouth sounds great. You know, I'm laughing also just because, you know, I'm just laughing with my own big, large family, how we communicate with one another. And,
right.
let alone if you introduce fantasy football, which we're all now engaging. It's easy to get caught into following different things. And so I just think, let's all show up to the best of our ability, co-create this thing. And again, with the Charter for Compassion, just love the work, the service that whole network is doing. And I'm thrilled that the Charter for Compassion is part of the Visionaries Summit and a lot of these other groups. So
Me too.
let's have some fun.
That too, definitely.
Yeah, I want to just step in here. I just want to say something very quickly. One of the things, if you've noticed, is how unified the secular world might be in their own way. For example, a political party, the GOPs, are very tight. Even if they think whatever they're doing is wrong, their messaging stays spot on. And again, I always bring Marianne into I'm bringing Marianne rather in the dialogue, because even within the spiritual community, there's been so much backlash about why is she running this. Come on, what can we do as evolving communities, awakened communities, compassionate communities, that we can really begin to just hold true to one message? It's really stick to one message and create such an energy around that one message that stands true for all these sectors of the illuminaries or the cultural creatives or folks who just want a better humanity. And that's a question I will leave us to try to ponder on, and perhaps we'll talk about it in the summit too if you join us in September, in a few weeks, is that we really need to begin to come together, even if we don't fully agree on everything. There's got to be a stronger energetic force that we begin to support. And I think that's an act of compassion as well.
I agree. Well, thank you both so very much for joining us today. We look forward to putting this out to our friends to invite them to the Visionary Summit. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by a lot of people from Seattle that are going to come on this line. So, so we need to leave the line. And I so look forward to spending time with you again in Sacramento. Welcome to my hometown. And I honor the two of you and all the work that you do. And I thank you so much for joining us here at the Charter for Compassion and here in Sacramento for the Visionary Summit. And have a beautiful day. Thank you for your time and everything that you bring through your heart, through your mind, your wisdom, and your experience.